Hi, everybody. My guest on the podcast today is going to be Father McCarthy. Those of you who have been listening to the podcast for a long time know him. I've interviewed him probably more than anyone else on this channel. But if you would like to join a retreat with Father McCarthy and myself in November, please see the link below or the link that I'm going to post in the comments. We're going to meet every Thursday night in November, except for Thanksgiving, and we're going to go through his series of talks called Behold the Lamb, which is widely recognized to be the most spiritually profound explanation of the nonviolent Jesus of the Gospels. Might sound a little strange to some of you Catholics who have never heard anything like that before. I guarantee you it will be very, very fascinating, intellectually stimulating, and spiritually fruitful if you want to join us. So I want to invite you to come to that, and here is the interview. Thanks so much. Okay, welcome everybody. This is episode 79 of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast, and I'm so excited to welcome back Father Emmanuel Charles McCarthy. Thank you so much for joining us, Charlie.
Oh, sure. Glad to be here, Ellen. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. It's been a while since we've had you on the show, and I dropped the ball for a while with my podcast. I wasn't doing a lot of podcasts, but now that I'm doing more, and especially with everything that's happening in Israel and Gaza, I just wanted to call you up and ask you what do you think of everything that's happening? And I know that other people who are listeners of the podcast would be wondering as well if you have any thoughts on that. So I was just going to ask quickly, your take on everything that's going on over there. You always have a unique perspective to offer. So I'd love to hear any thoughts that you have.
Well, I have some thoughts. What's going on now over in the Middle East, in Palestine, is so suffused in the American mind anyway, the mind that we're living in, that in the immediate presentation of it, that it's difficult for an individual human being to do any kind of analysis or get any kind of clarity of where to stand in front of it. That may be especially true for Christians. But let me begin by just raising this issue. There's a saying from way back. I mean, we're talking 500 years before Jesus. Euripides has a saying that the quote is exactly, "This is slavery, not to speak one's thoughts." This is slavery, not to speak one's thoughts. And I think in terms of the Israel-Palestine situation over 50, 60, 70 years more, maybe, it has been difficult to speak one's thoughts. More difficult as the decades have gone on till today. And what I mean by that is that there has developed a concrete as well as a sub rosa method of censorship in keeping people from speaking their thoughts on what's going on over there in Palestine. And this is done in a lot of different ways. But the fact is that if a person speaks too clearly and with too much history of what's going on over there, and too clearly about the levels of carnage and what it means, not just for now, not just today or yesterday, but for decades in the past, he can be labeled, or she can be labeled anti-Semitic or all kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at a map of Palestine that we're talking about, and if you look at that map in 1948, at the time that the first war of Israel against the Palestinians against the Israeli Jewish people took place, what you see Palestine. If Palestine, what is governed by the Palestinians, is in green, you will see that basically all of that that's called Palestine is in green. There's a little speck of white, yes, and that's Israel. And then there's most of it, the vast majority of it, is green. Now, as you move along through the decades in a graph like that, you'll find that more and more of Palestine, same country, same geography, is no longer green, it's white. Until you get to today, where the area of that same geography, the area that is now governed by Palestinians, is but a speck of the whole area. Where at one time, 1948 and before, it was all of that area. So how did sane people have to ask? How did it happen that basically 98% of the territory has gone from one group of people to another in terms of governance control over a period of 60 years? Did one side just give the land over? And the answer, of course, is no. Over these past 60 or so years, 70 years, whatever it's been, more than that, really, if you go back before 1948, what's been going on over there has been evil. Yeah, that's the word, evil. Mass slaughter on a large scale. Torture, maiming, lies, deceit. Both ways. We're not picking on anyone. Both ways. Hate to a large hate. And so it's not the movement of control of a territory from almost 100% of one group to 100% of a group that had only a little 5% of it in 70 years or so is the product of violence. It's a product of violence. Violence and violence in terms of the actual killing of people, and violence in terms of planning to kill, planning to dispossess, planning to, in other words, this area for the last, I don't know how far we're going to go back. We're certainly going to go back before 1948, certainly into the 30s. This area has been has been just a cauldron of evil in the forms of homicidal violence, hate, enmity, deceit. That's history. And so Euripides quote, "This is slavery, not to be able to speak one's thoughts." It's almost impossible to talk about the history that precedes this moment. But what's taking place at this moment does not arise ex nihilo, out of nothing. It arises out of 90 or more years of mutual hate and anger and violence and envy and evil. Now, once that's recognized, it has to be remembered that the vast majority of people are not only oblivious conceptually to the enormity of the suffering and death and violence on both sides, Jewish and Palestinian, that has taken place, they're indifferent to it. Basically, their knowledge goes back to I don't know, some recent times, in my own case, I remember being in Israel, Palestine in 1966. And at that time, you could go from Palestine, the Jewish side of Jerusalem to the Arab side, and Palestinian side. You had to get a kind of visa across something called the Alabi Bridge, and to get back. And then they stamped your passport, but they didn't really stamp it. They gave you a special carry-on stamp that wouldn't show in your passport. It was convoluted, but I was there in '66, and it was my own experience was that there was a certain amount of comedy, of decency, of human respect. I'll say it that way. In 1966, When I went back in 81, which is the next time I was there, it was still pretty good. I still felt it was, I still felt, despite all the things that had gone on since then, the war of 67, et cetera, I thought the atmosphere and the people, both sides, were, it was all right. It was all right. It was human. It was livable on both sides. But when I went back in 89, I left with this. And I'll tell you what my thought was. When I left the Tel Aviv airport in 89, my thought process was, this is a fascist state. That was my experience. I always wore my priest clothes, you know, the Roman collar, et cetera, over there, and the vitriol and the demeanor of people. This is in Jerusalem now, and in Jerusalem, toward me was. I mean, I never experienced such a thing, you know, as a priest. It was addressed to me as a priest, maybe as a Catholic, because a priest, Roman Catholic priest wears a collar, maybe as a Catholic, maybe as a Christian, but there was certainly hate that I never experienced there in the times I went before. And so I just, in 89, I said, I don't need to come back to this place. And I haven't been back, not interested in going back. But I would just assume that process of degradation that was occurring on both sides because of the ongoing hurt and hate and killing and deception on both sides, it just degrades people and degrades their mutual relationship and so forth. And so I think one of the problems that we have here is that that there's an absence in the common mind of everyone that's looking at Fox or NBC or ABC or MSNBC or what have you, that there's just the most superficial understanding of the history. But not only of the history, Ellen, but of the misery and the pain on both sides, and the psychological effect on both sides of living under this for whatever it is, 70, 80, 90 years. And so if we may go back again for a moment to the BC era, you know, long about 65 BC, Cicero made the point, not to know what happened before you were born is to be a child forever. Not to know what happened before you were born is to be a child forever. I would add to that, Ellen, not to know what happened before you were born is to be a dangerous child forever. A child that can be manipulated by lies in all directions, who has no basis in historical fact for what they are choosing or for evaluating what they are being told. I remember years and years ago, let's put it that way, in a kind of informal discussion among people that I was attending, but that was particularly rooted in, aimed at trying to understand, comprehend, evaluate, come up with some suggestions for being helpful in terms of this Middle East conflict between the Jewish people and the Palestinian people. And I remember saying in that conversation, or raising in that conversation, just as a way to raise an issue that I thought was real, and that and that should be discussed as a human issue. I remember quoting W.H. Auden's September 1st, 1939, the poem, which he wrote on the day that Hitler invaded Poland. He wrote New York. He was in New York. But a little piece of that poem, a line from that poem is this, quote, "I and the public know what all school children learn. Those to whom evil is done do evil in return." Close quote. I just raised that. And what I was suggesting was to the little group I was with, what I was suggesting was that a great deal of evil had been done to the Palestinian people by Jewish people in that area of the world. Well, I'll tell you, that just about ended the dialogues, you know. Everything under the sun was raised that was not on the issue. I was being anti-Semitic. I didn't understand the situation. I didn't know the things the Palestinians did to the Jews, et cetera, et cetera. And all I was trying to point out is that what Auden is writing about is a human tendency or propensity that if you do evil to someone, they're going to do evil back. It's called revenge. It's called hate. I don't know if any of you or your audience have ever seen the movie A Savage Peace. As far as I'm concerned, it's a must-see for anyone interested in peace and justice and so forth.
I have not seen that. Savage Peace, huh? Okay.
Savage Peace. And what it's about is what the winners did. The winners of the Second World War did to the German people after the Second World War. It's what they did in Czechoslovakia, in Lithuania, in Poland. It's nothing short of ethnic cleansing. And it is brutal. And it's all the things that are associated with war: torture, rape, killing of children, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all documented. This is a documentary. What I'm saying is, once you get into this maelstrom of hate and retaliation and viciousness and murder and anger and destruction of people and their loved ones back and forth, you don't come out of that. You don't come out of that. People don't walk away from that. And just because the big shots, the old men, the big shots, sign some papers, people don't forget. The people, Jewish or Palestinians, whose children, whose sons, whose daughters, whose husbands, wives are being destroyed over there. And right now, nothing is going to change. I mean, there'll be a hole in their lives forever. But there will also be a real possibility that the people are going to live with hate and revenge in their hearts for a lifetime. Now, therefore, what I'm raising here is that this is nothing here. There's nothing here that's Christian or particularly Christian or anything. It's just secular knowledge. So while I'm on secular knowledge, let me give you another example of secular knowledge.
Okay.